Hey guys, I was down harvesting some of my dahlia a few days ago and I noticed that some of the leaves have started to get powdery mildew. It actually had got really bad. So I'm down here today to try and treat this and get it under control so that it doesn't damage my flowers or spread to the rest of the allotment. A lot of people here are growing cucumbers and squash and things that powdery mildew love. So I want to get it out of my garden before it spreads to theirs. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I'm growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, we are at the beginning of July, which is the end of rainy season, hopefully. The end of rainy season here in Japan. It's 9 o'clock in the morning and it's already past 1,000,000 degrees hot. So hence my cap, but I'm actually going to change it out because the mosquitoes are out as well. Good luck. Love it. Okay, so when I... What is this? Never mind. Okay, so when I came down to harvest, these were looking terrible. They were absolutely covered in powdery mildew and they've actually got a little bit better. Now that doesn't overly surprise me. First, what is powdery mildew? Okay, this is powdery mildew. You can see I've got it on quite a lot of the leaves. And it literally looks just like it's kind of been coated in flour. I thought that was some kind of terrible disease, but I've just realised it's actually the pollen drop from here. That scared me. But no, this is the powdery mildew that we're looking at. So this is it in the early stages. And you can tell that because although it's kind of white and powdery on top, if you turn the leaf over, underneath of the leaf still looks pretty healthy. So here's another one. It's kind of covered in the powder, but if you turn it over, it's still looking okay. So I think I have got this early enough to be able to treat it quite well. Okay, so powdery mildew is a fungus, but it's quite unique in that it doesn't want to kill your plants. Powdery mildew has two phases. The first phase is when it kind of dusts the top of your plants like this and they look a bit like they're covered in flour, and that's the first stage, and these are the spores. And then the spores actually put down roots into your leaves, and that's when you can start to see it affect the back of your leaf. Is when they put the roots down into the leaves and they actually suck out the nutrition from inside the leaf. So they need your plant to be alive for them to be able to live and to expand. So they're not actually going to kill your plant, but like I say, they are they are sucking the nutrition out of your plant, so they're going to affect your plant. If this is, like I say, they affect cucumbers and squash and things like that, get powdery mildew quite often. So it's going to affect the amount of fruit you get and the size and the quality of the fruit. In your flowers, it will affect how many flowers you get and the quality of those flowers. So you do want to get rid of it, but also the main thing is that it's going to weaken your plant and that will make it susceptible to other diseases and pests that will kill it. So you want to try and treat this as soon as you can. So it doesn't overly surprise me that I've got powdery mildew right now. Like I say, it's been rainy season, which is pretty much the perfect conditions in Japan for this to happen. Now usually you'll find powdery mildew at the beginning, in the spring and in the autumn, and that's because for the two stages to be able to happen, they like high humidity during the day and a low humidity at night, and that usually happens when you're getting warm days but still cold nights, and that temperature shift is exactly what these guys like. But here it's rainy season, so we're getting, when it rains, it's cold and there's a low humidity, and then after that it's hot and there's a high humidity. So that is the perfect condition for these. Also inside of the plants, now I've packed these quite densely, so there's not a great airflow. Now I did come down and when I first noticed this, I cut away a lot of the foliage at the bottom of the plant to try and improve circulation inside so that there's not a damp environment within the plants themselves. I'm going to do more of that today to try and improve that a little bit, but because it's kind of always a little bit damp and then it's got the humidity and right now the heat, it's the perfect condition for this to happen. I didn't have this last year because I planted my dahlia a lot later last year. They only went in the ground in June, so they were still really small at this point last year. And you know, I think although they've been giving me flowers for a good month now, and that's been lovely, if this is going to affect them a lot, I might actually hold off on planting my dahlia next year until after rainy season has finished, maybe. But now I have it, how am I going to treat it? So like I said, my dahlia are packed quite closely together. So the first thing that I'm going to do is cut away a lot of this foliage at the bottom, now that the dahlia are tall, and they are much taller, you can see now they're getting nice and tall, I can cut away a lot of the foliage at the bottom, and that's going to increase the airflow in there and make it so that it's not so damp. I am then going to cut away any leaves that I find that are infected. Now, it's very important that you don't put them in your compost pile and you remove them from the garden. So I have a bag down with me, and I will be taking all of that home because the spores can survive the composting process and they will go on to infect anything else that's in your garden. They can also survive wintertime, so you don't really want to be leaving them around the garden because the spores will survive the winter, they'll go dormant, and then they'll come back next spring when the conditions are right. So you want to be removing this entirely from your garden and not leaving any spores around to infect anything else. Then I looked up, and there were a couple of methods for treating this that were recommended, but the most popular ones seem to be bicarbonate of soda. So 1 tablespoon of bicarb of soda, half a teaspoon of dish soap, and a gallon of water. First off, I have no idea how big a gallon of water is. Like, it just means a lot, right? I don't know. Give me litres or pints, I can deal with that. So yeah, a gallon of water. But having looked that up more and investigated a little more, I found that research done in university settings have actually shown that that doesn't work very well. What does work better is potassium bicarbonate, which is slightly different from your regular baking soda or bicarbonate of soda. But potassium bicarbonate seems to have better results in certain situations. So I decided I'm going to skip that and use a much, much older method, which is milk. So when I came down, this was really bad. It's actually looking a lot better today, and I'm going to assume that is because the weather's changed a little bit. We have had heavy downpours the last couple of days, and powdery mildew doesn't actually like that. It can get washed off and just go away by itself if the weather changes. And I assume that's what's happened, but there is still some on here. So I'm going to cut off as much as I can, and then I'm going to spray on. This is half and half. Now, because it was quite a bad infection, I'm going to call it infection, I have done half milk, half water in here. If you're just noticing for the first time, you can do less. You can do like a third milk and the rest water. But I've done half and half. Now, this is going to smell a bit sour. It's really hot out here. It's not going to be nice, but it's nicer than everyone's crops getting infected. So that's what I'm going to do. This is, it has to be sitting on the affected area for it to work. So you've really got to spray all over your leaves and under your leaves and on your stalks and make sure you're hitting every single bit. And then come back and reapply in a few days. And obviously if it rains, this will get washed off, so you have to come back and do it again. But this is what I'm going to do. So first I'm going to harvest all these nice dahlia that have come up for me since I was last down. Then I will cut away the foliage, and then I will start spraying. And I'll come back and do this over the next couple of days and see if it actually makes a difference, because I have no idea why this is going to work. But people have been using it for a long time, so let's try. Yeah, you can see the powdery mildew on the leaves, so. That is my dahlia for today. Now I must say that these little ones are showing a lot more powdery mildew and more on their stems than on the leaves than the rest of them are. And I think that's simply because of where they are. These are down kind of at the front here, but they are smaller than the other ones, so they're getting shaded out, which means they're not getting as much sun. And like all viruses, powdery mildew hates sun. So these are in full sun, so the ones that are at the top, I'm guessing the powdery mildew is getting hit by the sun more, whereas these ones are a bit more shaded, so it's not quite working in the same way. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut off all of the leaves and foliage and gather them all up in a bag and make sure I'm taking it all home with me. Okay. Okay, so I have cut all that back, and you can see I've been quite ruthless with it. If there's something Ikebana teaches you, it's to be ruthless with your hacking off bits. So it's nice and airy down here. I've got most of the affected leaves, although some of the stems are still affected. I am finding that the darker coloured stems have more powdery mildew on them than the lighter coloured stems. Don't know what that's about, just an observation. But you must also remember that the powdery mildew can the spores can stay on weeds as well. So next I am going to go through and I'm going to make sure that there are no weeds left under my dahlia. And honestly, after rainy season, the garden needs a really good weeding anyway. So that's next, get the weeds out. Okay, now it's all weeded. I'm going to go ahead and start spraying with this. Like I say, this is 50-50, just milk and water. I'm going to make sure I try and get it on all the affected areas, all the stems, all the leaves and under the leaves, and it has to be touching the powdery mildew for it to have any effect on it. So you really have to make sure you're drenching it basically to try and get rid of this powdery mildew. Let's go. Okay, I think that's them pretty drenched. I used up almost the whole bottle. So I'm going to leave them and then I'll come back down in a couple of days. I'll bring more milk, see if it's actually working and see if it needs done again. But for now, that's as much as I can do. Just wait. Now remember, this is a fungus you're dealing with, so when you get home you're going to want to make sure you are sterilising all the equipment you used here. I will sterilise my weeder, I will sterilise my my snips. I just do that with spray alcohol and a piece of kitchen towel. You wipe them down every time to make sure that you're not then going to spread them around your garden. Now there are actually mosquito. Oh, you got me. There are actually hundreds, if not thousands, of different fungus that are classed as powdery mildew, and they all like to attack different plants. So just because I have powdery mildew here on my dahlia, it does not mean it's going to spread to my other flowers. Now some things, if you have similar plant groups like your brassicas, anything in that group, it will be the same powdery mildew, so if you get it on one thing it will travel to another. But in my garden I think I should be okay. I've got another couple of dahlia that are down at the bottom there. I'm just going to check them and make sure that they're okay, but hopefully the rest of the garden is all right, and I will keep you updated and let you know if this works. Okay, it's been 2 days since I came down and started the treatment for the powdery mildew on these, and we've had a little bit of rain, so I've come down today to put some more of this on because it gets washed off with the rain. But I'm really impressed. I'm going to show you this because it looks like there's hardly any powdery mildew left at all, and that's after 2 days. I'll give you a closer look. And there's a few white spots on this leaf, but I actually think they might be milk spots rather than the powdery mildew because they don't have the powdery feeling to them. I mean, this one too looks a bit white, but I think that's maybe the milk rather than the powdery mildew. Now this one had it on its stem, so you can still see there's a little bit on the stem, but nowhere near what it was. This one's got a little bit still on the stem also. But this seems to be really working. Now it was a lot worse around the other side, so I will go and check the ones on the other side. Okay, so these ones, these kind of darker ones, were much more in the shade, and because there was so much foliage here, these were much more shaded out. So I found that the powdery mildew was worse on those. I also found that it was worse on the darker stems for some reason. But again, if you look here, these are looking great. So this was kind of the worst affected bit, and you can see it still has some. This has been knocked about by the wind. We've had storms the last few days. It's still a little bit powdery, but absolutely nothing compared to what it was. Again, I think that's actually milk spot rather than powdery mildew. But these stems, nothing at all. Okay, so I'm just spraying it again and making sure that I'm really getting in at the stems this time, because that seems to be where it's still lingering. Okay, so that's all sprayed down again. I'm really impressed. That's only been 2 days and the difference is absolutely amazing. Now, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the fact that we've had a little bit of a change in the weather, and I cut off so much of the foliage down here. It's obviously going to look better with less foliage on, but I think that's really increased the airflow through it as well. But so far, really good. I'll come back in a couple of days and check out again, but I was really skeptical. I mean, milk, it seems just way too easy, but it's working. Okay, it's now been a week since I first came and treated these, and I brought a little bit more of this down because it has been raining, but honestly, I don't think I need it. Let's have a look. These leaves, oh, look totally fine. This one at the back was the worst affected, and you can see it does still have a little bit of mildew going on there. But really, that is it. One plant. All the others are doing really well. And you can see I cut them back really hard, but they're already starting to put out new shoots where I cut off all the foliage. So these are getting lots of air through them, but I'm also getting lots of new shoots coming out, which is great. It's maybe a bit hard to see in the light, but these stems do still have a bit, can I get this to focus? A little bit of powdery residue on them right at the base. That's just one though, the rest seem to be nice and green and looking good. And even though I chopped them back really hard, you can see that I'm still getting plenty of flowers coming up. And with all those new shoots, hopefully I'll get even more healthy flowers, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off that little bit of foliage that still has lots of mildew on it and give it one more spray. Again, this is just half milk, half water. But I'm really impressed with that as an experiment. I really didn't think it would work because it seems really simple and really easy. But I guess sometimes the old remedies are the best. So I'm really glad I tried this. Okay, so thanks for watching along on this experiment with me. If you've had success treating your powdery mildew with another remedy, then let me know in the comments. If you want to follow along and see how we do over the season, then remember to hit the subscribe button. If you want to see what I do with the flowers that I cut, then you can check out my Instagram, which is From the Witch's Garden, and there's a link to that underneath this video. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!